I will not be voting for this bill. I do not believe it should even be permitted to proceed through this House, and I tabled a reasoned amendment to that effect. And certainly not at this time when we're in the midst of a global pandemic. This government's approach is fatally flawed. In plain language, it puts the cart before the horse, post-Brexit immigration legislation before all the legal, economic and trade relationship with the EU is anywhere settled. Our relationship with the EU will remain our most important external economic relationship for years to come. It's important to get that right. Our immigration system should fit into that, not the other way around. Worse still, this bill is supplemented by a whole slew of Henry VIII powers. Mrs. Deputy Speaker, my constituents did not elect me to this House to hand away the right to speak up for them and represent them on these issues. What does our democracy even mean if any government are given the opportunity to make laws that so fundamentally affect people's lives and the economy with little scrutiny and behind closed doors? That is essentially a constitutional power grab. No government should be given a blank check that it can redeem anytime it's in trouble or tempted to whip up anti-migrant sentiment as a distraction. And who would trust this government with these powers? Immigration policy brought by this government has been bad enough as it is. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this will be the second time in the past 10 years that a Conservative government has retrospectively changed the rights of migrants after they have entered this country, after they've lived here, after they've settled here, had children here, opened business here, paid taxes here. They did this in 2014 to the Windrush generation, and we saw just how many suffered. But by pressing ahead with this legislation, it seems there were no lessons learned at all. The government's commitments on EU nationals' rights are meaningless if not underpinned by primary legislation, if they are not granted automatic settled status. This legislation does neither. Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue to allow governments to keep passing legislation like this. It leaves migrants and the children of migrants asking at what point are their rights in this country, their home, truly secure. Instead of making reassurances and creating a migration system that is fair, respects human rights and benefits our economy, this government have opted to simply subject EU nationals to the same hostile environment policies that they have had for people for outside of the EU, the same failed and inhumane hostile environment. Children born here who've lived here their whole life that asked to pay over £1,000 to be British. Families are split apart because of the arbitrary minimum income threshold. Data sharing with the Home Office makes the most vulnerable scared to use services. Continuing with no recourse to public funds, even though the courts have ruled it unlawful and the coronavirus has proved it inhumane. Detaining people for months on end, even the victims of torture and trafficking, longer than any other country in Europe, only to eventually release nearly 70% of them, allowing private companies to profit from their misery. This and the government's point-based system ends nothing of this. In fact, it doesn't even help our work shortages. The IPPR shows the income threshold would mean 69% of EU nationals would not be eligible. And to all those who call these workers low-skilled, these workers earning below the salary threshold are not low-skilled at all. There is no such thing as low-skilled work, just low-pay work. All work is skilled when it is done well. Persisting down this line is a slap in the face to those many key workers who are low-paid, who have been our backbone throughout this pandemic. How callous is it that we should bring forward this bill without being sensitive to these matters? Mr. Deputy Speaker, what we need is a fair immigration policy that doesn't retrospectively strip people of their rights, an immigration policy which meets this country's needs and ultimately ends the hostile environment. The government is not in any way attempting to do that. History proved those brave few right who voted against the 2014 immigration bill, and I urge all members to vote down this disgraceful piece of legislation today. Thank you.